Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. The bell and the geese call us together in covenant to bring our search for truth and meaning, to unfold into understanding, thence into love. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in formerly Lenape territory, White Plains, New York. I'm Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister here, coming to you from our congregation's sanctuary.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, CUUC music director here at my piano in Manhattan. Tracy Brenneman, our religious educator, is off today.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which affirms 5 commitments: learning, freedom, justice, institution building, and hope.
Learning. Revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism.
Freedom. All relations must rest on free consent, and because coercions may be subtle, the work of detecting and removing them is ongoing.
Justice. We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. Hence, the voices of prophets are central and indispensable.
Institution building. We cannot become whole nor advance learning, freedom, and justice without good institutions.
Hope. Things could get better. There's no guarantee they will, but through our efforts, they really might.
Today is the Sunday at the end of the 4th full week of spring. Sunrise this morning in White Plains was 6:09 a.m., which means that the lengthening days have finally given us back the hour of morning sunlight that we lost 5 weeks ago with daylight savings time. The waxing crescent moon is 1 week past new.
On the Muslim calendar, we are in Ramadan. The month-long holy time of fasting, prayer, and community began last Monday evening. Ramadan Mubarak.
And this Thursday, April 22nd, will be Earth Day. The theme for Earth Day 2021 is Restore Our Earth, and earthday.org is planning 3 days of climate action culminating on Earth Day the 22nd, so check out earthday.org.
And a special welcome to our visitors. If you are a first-time visitor, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You will find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. There you will also find other resources to help keep us connected during this time and a donate button. For April, our Share the Plate funds go to the Westchester Community College Foundation, a student emergency fund. We are able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, for the plate share, and for the minister's discretionary fund.
And now board chair Joe Majak has some news and will then lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board for this congregation, I welcome you. Did you know that our annual pledge campaign has kicked off? This year, we will concentrate our annual pledge campaign from mid-March to early May. This year's Canvas theme is, we will be back with more hope, vigor, and strength. And we need everyone's support to help make that happen. Members will receive a mailing with information about the campaign and the financial status of a congregation emerging from its first global pandemic. We will also have a series of speakers delivering a 3 to 5 minute testimonial during Sunday service, describing what CUUC has meant to them and why they feel so strongly about supporting it financially. Our congregation is comprised of 200 family units. Each one has its own unique features and character, or characters as the case may be. But one area where we can agree to come together is financially supporting CUUC. Where else do our principles align themselves with a faith community like CUUC and the UU denomination? It's worth it. And now it's time to light the chalice. On the Sunday at the end of the 4th full week of spring, we dedicate our chalice to the 4th principle of our faith, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Napoleon Lovely. We light this chalice to affirm the new light is ever waiting to break through to illumine our way. That new truth is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our minds. And that new love is ever waiting to break through to warm our hearts.
The first of England's stranger churches, Protestant churches for foreigners, started in 1547, led by Bernardino Ochino of Italy, whose name just keeps popping up in our story. A few years later, 1550, the Dutch Stranger Church of London received a royal charter and was incorporated by letters patent. Archbishop of Canterbury Thomas Cranmer supported the Stranger Church for two reasons. The Stranger Church provided a possible model of how a Reformed Protestant church might work in England, and it also served to help suppress those heresies that went too far, such as Unitarianism. For instance, in 1551, Dutch surgeon George van Paris of the London Stranger Church was executed by his fellow Dutchmen for denying that Jesus Christ was God. King Edward VI wrote in his diary that day, "A certain Arian of the strangers, a Dutchman, being excommunicated by the congregation, was, after long disputation, condemned to the fire." When Edward was succeeded by Mary I, stranger churches were shut down as Mary sought to bring England back into the Catholic fold. Mary was then succeeded by Elizabeth I, who sought compromise. Doctrine would be a compromise between Luther and Calvin. Worship and ceremony would be a compromise between Catholic and Protestant. In 1559, 1 year into her reign, Elizabeth permitted re-establishment of the stranger church and abolished laws for burning heretics. She also, that year, enacted the Act of Uniformity, requiring everyone to worship either in the Church of England or the stranger church. Protestant exiles who had fled Mary's oppression flocked home under Elizabeth. These exiles brought with them a new Protestant radicalism picked up on the continent, and they wanted not compromise, but a purified English church purged of every vestige of Catholicism. Elizabeth's compromises did not include these more Puritan Protestants, nor did they include Unitarians questioning the deity of Jesus or the doctrine of the Trinity.
Are we a stranger church? Okay. The Canadian-born composer of African descent, R. Nathaniel Dett, prefaced the work I'm about to play for you now from his suite Cinnamon Grove with these lines from Tagore's epic poem Gitanjali. "When thou commandest me to sing, it seems that my heart would break with pride, and I look to thy face, and tears come to my eyes."
A couple haiku from Kobayashi Isa. Children imitating cormorants are even more wonderful than cormorants. And even on the smallest islands, they are tilling the fields, skylarks singing. Imani Perry's little book, Breathe, a letter to my sons, begins with these two haiku as epigraphs, and then a poem of her own. Through good, nothing, or ill, your mother stands behind you in front of the looking glass. The boy standing before his mother blinks, and there is another stalk high. Seeing a child and another, I know and do not know, my own and belonging only to himself and to himself. Smuggling truth off the well-worn and decent corridors, mother to son, we race in the woods through an underground railroad of all ways. Dear sons of cotton, muscle, and bone, I am for you. She then begins the first chapter with a further epigraph. It must be terrifying to raise a black boy in America, attributed to everybody and their mother, and father too. Perry then writes, between me and these others who utter the sentence, the indelicate assertion hangs midair. Without hesitation, they speculate, as if it is a statement of fact. I look into their wide eyes. I see them hungry for my suffering, or crude with sympathy, or grateful they are not in such a circumstance. Sometimes they are even curious. It makes my blood boil, my mind furnace hot. I seldom answer a word. I am indignant at their pitying eyes. I do not want to be their emotional spectacle. I want them to admit that you are people, black boys, people. This fact, simple as it is, shouldn't linger on the surface. It should penetrate. It often doesn't, not in this country anyway. But no matter how many may say so, my sons, you are not a problem. Mothering you is not a problem. It is a gift, a vast one, a breathtaking one, beautiful. YouTube, and now the spoken invocation, and then please sing along with the sung invocation. Words of invocation from Reverend Betts Wienicke. As we gather together this morning, may we learn to recognize and affirm the pieces of possibility, the bits of good we bring. May we encourage rather than control, love rather than possess, enable rather than envy, allowing our individual gifts to weave a patchwork of peace, the soft, deep blue of sensitivity and understanding, the red energy of creativity, the white heat of convictions, the risky, fragile green of new growth, the golden flashes of gratitude, the warm rose of love. Each of us is indispensable if we are to minister to a broken and wounded world. Together, in our gathered diversity, we form the whole. So be it. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from Spirit of Truth. I invite you to sing along with Kim and Georgiana.
Spirit of truth, that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth, thy shadow near. So may we find the strength to stand face forward, courage to walk toward the dawning day.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. This morning's opening music is going to be provided by one of our young members and my piano student, Wesley Miller. This is a work by Leonard Bernstein. It's one of his 4 anniversaries. This one is dedicated to his wife, the Argentinian actress Felicia Montalegre.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cortland, part of CUUC since 1995. We raised our 3 kids in RE here, and I remember the very first auction we planned to attend. It was rained out, and the basement of our new house flooded that very night. Our CUUC connections go back a long time. When I think of CUUC since pandemic's beginning, I think of connections that have sustained me. First, connections during services, the resourceful and near instant turn to virtual services that are now woven into our new normal. The inspiration and thought-provoking sermons and comments and poems and readings that we hear from our talented ministers, and the joy of the choir and Adam's piano. I love sharing our joys and sorrows and taking those little pieces of your lives with me into the week. And of course, we can't ever forget coffee hour. There's always a smile to be seen or a chuckle to be heard. But last week, Ingrid really inspired me when she said, Astrid and I got together to try out an air fryer. There is still joy to be found. She had me smiling to myself all week. Second, connections by socializing. Yes, even despite pandemic, CUUC provided get-togethers. Several 2020 auction dinners were held, and last summer, our deck was filled with tables spaced 6 feet apart while we hosted a dozen or so guests at our deferred Israeli auction dinner. We enjoyed a virtual Swiss dinner hosted by the Bears, who provided delicious food, sort of like your own Blue Apron. and wine that we all shared together over Zoom. And last fall, our terrific auction committee brought us a drive-through Halloween celebration. The kids were so excited. Third, connections with our larger community. Through Hope, our congregation members have made and delivered thousands of meals to neighbors in need. We have continued to support 3 families who have immigrated from Afghanistan and Syria and hope to bring a 4th over sometime this year. And our environmental group continues to urge us to recycle food scraps and anything else we can get our hands on, I'm sure. Now is the time to think about maintaining and sustaining our connections financially. As my favorite CUUC treasurer and husband has reminded us, nurturing and growing our community means paying the bills, and our donations are the primary source of those funds. During pandemic, some expenses decreased, some increased, and we lost some income as we lost a tenant that's gone virtual all the time, and we no longer have the film crews who use our facilities to stage filming because there is no filming. Through the tumult of pandemic, demonstrations, the assault on the Capitol, and of course our everyday joys and sorrows, we have had each other to sustain us emotionally, and this is the most important reason to support CUUC generously. In thinking about what you're comfortable giving, please consider increasing your pledge so that we can continue to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. And while you're thinking about those things, please pat yourselves on the back and give each other a collective high five to congratulate yourselves on how well we've completed our mission despite these difficult times. Thank you so much.
I have written a poem for a woman who rides a bus in New York City. She's a maid. She has 2 shopping bags. When the bus stops abruptly, she laughs. If the bus stops slowly, she laughs. If the bus picks up someone, she laughs. If the bus misses someone, she... So I watched her for about 9 months. I thought, Now, if you don't know black features, you may think she's laughing. But she wasn't laughing. She was simply extending her lips and making a sound. I said, oh, I see. That's that survival apparatus. Now, let me write about that to honor this woman who helps us to survive. By her very survival, Miss Rosie, through your destruction I stand up. So I used the poem with Mr. Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, Masks, and my own poem for old black men. Mr. Dunbar wrote Masks in 1892. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It shades our cheeks and hides our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding heart, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh my God, our tears to thee from tortured souls arise. And we sing, hey, baby, bye. We sing, hey, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world think otherwise. We wear the mask. When I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke, a dance that's walked, a song was spoke. I laugh so hard I almost choke when I think about myself. 70 years in these folks' world. The child I works for calls me girl. I say, yes, ma'am, for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break. So I laugh until my stomach ache when I think about myself. My folks can make me split my side. I laugh so hard, I nearly died. The tales they tell sound just like lying. They grow the fruit but eat the rind. I laugh until I start to cry when I think about myself and my folks and the little children. My fathers sit on benches. Their flesh count every plank. The slats leave dents of darkness deep in their withered flank, and they nod like broken candles, all waxed and burnt profound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission that made your world go round. There in those pleated faces I see the auction block, the chains and slavery's coffles, the whip and lash and stock. My father's speaking voices that shred my fact and sound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission and that made your world go round. They laughed to shield their crying. They shuffled through their dreams. They stepped and fetched a country and wrote the blues in screams. I understand their meaning. It could and did derive from living on the ledge of death. They kept my race alive by wearing the mask.
Let us pray. Dear power of love, through thy grace we are made worthy. Our hearts have sometimes poured forth thy love and sometimes brought us into wholeness and magnificence. We've also sometimes slid into reactivity, into greed or hatred. Let us be grateful for the glory of this great green earth, for the breath that fills our lungs over and over. Let us be grateful for the agreements being negotiated between the US, Japan, South Korea, and Canada to bolster their carbon emission reduction targets in anticipation of Earth Day next week. Let us be grateful for the large and small ways that we recognize our lives and well-being are mutually tethered to one another. Let our hearts and hopes be with Indigenous islanders from the Torres Strait, Australia, bringing a case to the UN Human Rights Commission as they seek to protect their homes from rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and flooding in recent years as a result of climate change. Let our hearts and our hopes be with the Syrian refugees in Denmark as it becomes the first EU country to deprive them of asylum status, even as Syria remains shattered. Let our hearts and our hopes be with the people of Afghanistan as the United States withdraws its military. Let our hearts and our hopes be with the people of Iran as their political leadership has decided to boost its uranium enrichment to 60%, its highest level ever. We acknowledge that our souls are weary with the news of the death of Dante Wright of Minnesota and Adam Toledo in Chicago and Lindani Mayeni in Honolulu. Young lives cut too short at the hands of police officers. Our grief hangs heavy with the massacre in Indianapolis Thursday night, on top of mass shootings last month in Atlanta, spas, and a Colorado grocery store. Let us be grateful for the COVID vaccine, for the millions more who get their shot every day, and yet our spirits groan beneath the continuing burden of the pandemic. A long way from over, says the World Health Organization. The official global death toll from COVID passed 3 million on Friday. Let our gratitude and our hearts and hopes be with all those working tirelessly and overtime to research and administer vaccines and care for the sick. Let our hearts and hopes be with the people of India and Brazil, where the pandemic now particularly rages. Dear power of love, let our hearts and hopes guide us to wherever life is broken, abused, and oppressed, that we may come into thy light by shining it where it is most needed. We ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to comfort what is cruel, and to heal what is broken. So for all that has been spoken, all that has been shared, and everything else that we are carrying in our hearts today, we observe a moment of silence.
Calling all you hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling all you hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
Music from Argentina, the Danza della Mossa Donosa, the Dance of the Pretty Girl, by Alberto Ginastera.
With Earth Day coming this week, it's time for our once-a-month eco-spiritual practice. Brought to you by CUUC's Environmental Practices Social Justice Team, eco-spiritual practice is oriented toward developing spirituality through our connection with our planet home and our responsibility to care for it. This month's eco-spiritual practice is to investigate how much is enough. We are embedded in a culture that equates status with expensive stuff. If you've ever felt or thought you would feel a touch of embarrassment about driving an older model car or appearing in cheap clothes, then you know what I mean. To one degree or another, we all experience pressure to keep up appearances we deem appropriate to our social standing. Tragically, dysfunctional American concepts of status are spreading. The nouveau riche class in emerging industrial countries, China, India, for example, is increasingly enamored with conspicuous consumption, and the growing middle class follows their lead. What others think of us will always matter. We want to be valued and respected. Is it possible to shift the way our culture accords status? It will be difficult, but not impossible. Our post about how much is enough includes 3 individual exercises to help your discernment emerge. You'll also find prompts for conversation at the next meeting of your eco-spiritual group. It's at cucmatters.org, and the link is in your eCommunitarian. I invite you now to join in singing along with the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, our hymn number 83, Winds Be Still. At the end of Breathe, a letter to my sons, Imani Perry writes, "If I say, follow your yearnings, that seems cliche, but it isn't. It is a sermon. though maybe a bit crude, and it has a particularly potent meaning for us. Because at the core of American racism is the belief that the things we blacks desire, the fact that we, the blacks, desire, the fact that we desire are perversions, either because we get too big for our britches or because our britches are too styled and tattered at once. Desire is such a beautiful and mysterious thing. It's dangerous, too. It coils around the world as it is. We are often driven by what we are told is the source of our loneliness, our feelings of inadequacy, our suffering. And the desire that grows can become a terrible distortion of the truth, a misunderstanding of our needs. We're also, however, driven by a yearning to be seen and understood. Sometimes that yearning is so strong, we allow ourselves to be eaten up by it, by those who would exploit it. But at other times, the good times, it's what makes us leave here having done something of value. Take the time to strip yourself down to the core, to the simplest of joys. What if you dream your life but remove all money moves, all contingent material fantasies, and just fill it with connection, grace, and rituals? How would it be? What would it look like? This isn't an ascetic's dream so much as it is a gospel of living in the along. It's a ritual of reorientation, a steadying, a sense of grace. It might not be enough, but it is something. And the fact is, if you get desire right, you will probably get love right too. End quote. Yes, it is a sermon. If it's a bit crude, it's because this is just the short sketch. Give this brilliant and passionate woman 20 minutes to flesh out these points, and I'm sure it would not be crude. I can't give you that sermon. I can only give you mine. Offer you this morning myself, that we might together make something we would call our sermon. And in that sermon, I would ask you to sit with this phrase: yearning to be seen and understood. Take a moment to sink into that. Let the words sink into you, reverberate in your cranium and inside your rib cage and in your pelvic bowl, yearning to be seen and understood. How is that for you? Is it a yearning pretty much basically satisfied? Think back on times when that desire to be seen and understood was a driving energy of your being. Maybe it didn't know where to drive you, but you wanted more than anything to belong, to know that you belonged, which can only be known when you see that you are seen and understand that you are understood. We are often driven, says Dr. Perry, by what we are told is the source of our loneliness, feelings of inadequacy, our suffering. Then maybe we want to hide. We might think we don't want to be seen for the inadequate creature that we are. When we are seen and understood, we're seen and understood for our worthiness, seen and understood into our worthiness. But if we don't believe our worthiness, we might hide away from the very thing that would reveal and create it. Then, as Dr. Perry says, the desire that grows can become a terrible distortion of the truth, a misunderstanding of our needs. Her hope for her sons, our hope for everyone, is to know and honor the yearning to be seen and understood, not back away from it, but also not, as she says, allow ourselves to be eaten up by it, by those who would exploit it. So watch out for that too. A lot of species are social, but humans, along with ants, bees, certain species of parasitic shrimp, a couple species of mole rat, and maybe meerkats and dwarf mongooses, jury's still out on them, are ultra-social species. Other apes are certainly highly social, but you'll never see a chimpanzee in the wild pull down a branch so another chimp can pick the fruit, which they then both share. You'll never see two chimps carrying one log. We are cooperative, not quite as much as ants and bees, but almost, and we bring to the table about 100,000 times more neurons for creatively figuring out and coordinating cooperative projects. We are made to belong with each other, to have a place among others, to contribute to something greater than ourselves, namely each other, to be known and recognized for our parts, to be, in short, seen and understood. This desire, balanced and channeled, Dr. Perry says, is what makes us leave here having done something of value. To do this, she recommends strip yourself down to the core, to the simplest of joys. Remove all money moves, all contingent material fantasies, and just fill it with connection, grace, and rituals. This, she tells us, is a gospel of living in the along. Living in the along is an allusion to a Gwendolyn Brooks poem that includes the lines, "Live not for battles won, live not for the end of the song, live in the along." Or as Gandhi said, the victory is in the doing. Or as you may remember from last week's sermon, only thus will you attain the good you will not attain. Live not for battles won. Live not for the end of the song. Live in the along. And the fact is, Dr. Perry says, if you get desire right, you will probably get love right too. Yes. Because to live in the along, carried forward by the project of building belonging, being seen and understood by seeing and understanding others, well, that's what love is. And this is what we are, people, naturally selected over millions of years to be this species that we are, this species that was built for and sometimes succeeds at building belonging together. People. It's what we do. Thus, at the end of her book, we find that Dr. Perry has brought us back to where she started. What she said on the first page. I want them to admit that you are people. Black boys, people. This fact, simple as it is, shouldn't linger on the surface. It should penetrate. It often doesn't, not in this country anyway. There's a long and complicated story about the psychology and the sociology, the economics and the history of how this human species, built to build belonging together, produced some groups with power and proclivity to exclude and oppress other groups. How some humans adopted strategies so profoundly counterproductive to coming into the human functioning for which we yearn. In denying the humanity of others, oppressors denied their own. It's a story I won't go into. Libraries have been written, and libraries more need to be written, further fleshing out that story. Despite that story, in the last generation are hopeful signs that we might be getting better at this being people business. Might be. I know a lot of people are still clinging to what Langston Hughes called the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. A lot of folks aren't able yet to see a better plan, but a lot of others are. A lot of Unitarians are among them. There is a new possibility in the land. For our interlude, we have video of a song from the musical Caroline or Change, set in 1963, featuring an African-American woman working as a maid at a time when new possibilities seemed so remote.
Thank you, Reverend Meredith. I hope that if the new production of Tony Kushner's musical Caroline or Change returns to Broadway next season, we can organize a contingent from CUUC to see it. The show deals with issues and challenges dear to our denomination, as when Caroline, the maid to a self-proclaimed progressive Jewish family living in Louisiana at the time of the JFK assassination, sings this brilliant number called Lot's Wife. In this angry, even bitter song, Caroline is struggling to accept her personal limitations, even as the world around her advances. It will not be her lot to become a civil rights advocate or to pursue an education. Her self-sacrifice in working at a degrading job for $30 a week to support her 4 kids as a single mom will ultimately enable a younger generation to make some of the gains she can barely envision.
Always there's been people who hold their head high getting through. I can't. Ain't never been no good finding joy the way you should. Hoping water turn to wine. Hope's fine, till it turned to mud. And some folks go to school at night, some folks march for civil rights. I ain't got the heart, I can't hardly read. Some folks do all kinds of things, and black folks someday live like kings, and someday sunshine shine all day. Oh sure, it's true, it be that way, but not for me. It's also true, y'all can't do what I can't do. You're strong, but you ain't strong like me. I'm gonna slam that iron down on my throat, gonna slam that iron down on my heart, gonna slam that iron down on my sex, gonna slam it down till I drown the fire out, till there ain't nowhere left anywhere. What else? What else? What else? What else, God? What else, God? Give me an armful. Slammed on the iron, slammed on the iron. Flat, 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 flat. How about that then? That's what Caroline can do. That's how she rearranged herself. That's how she changed. Murder me, God. Down in that basement. Tear out my heart, strangle my soul, turn me to salt, a pillar of salt, a broken stone, and then Caroline, from the evil she done, Lord, set her free, set her free.
I have an ask. Every year, I ask you, your denomination asks you to read one new book. Last year, it was Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. The year before that, it was an anthology of essays called Justice on Earth, People of Faith Working at the Intersections of Race, Class, and Environment. Every year since 2010, the Unitarian Universalist Association has selected a common read book for all UUs across the land to read and talk about, a text to engage together. Over the last 11 years, we Unitarians have read together, cried together, and laughed together with Margaret Regan's The Death of Jocelyn, immigration stories from the Arizona-Mexico borderlands. Ibu Patel, Acts of Faith, the story of an American Muslim, the struggle for the soul of a generation. Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. Saru Jayaraman, Behind the Kitchen Door, about restaurant workers. Paul Rezor, Reclaiming Public Witness, Liberal Religion in the Public Square. Brian Stevenson, Just Mercy, a story of justice and redemption. William Barber, The Third Reconstruction, How a Moral Movement is Overcoming the Politics of Division and Fear. The anthology Centering, Navigating Race, Authenticity, and Power in Ministry. And Francis Moore Lopez, Daring Democracy, Igniting Power, Meaning, and Connection. And this year, our common read is Imani Perry, Breathe, A Letter to My Sons. I ask you to buy or borrow the book and read it if you haven't. And I ask you to do that in the next month. And then I ask you to get together with other UUs to share and reflect on the experience of reading it. In past years, we offered a class about the common read. And this year, we're offering a small group experience because we want each person to have a chance to share a little more in depth and to have the more intimate experience of connecting with a small group engaging this text. I ask you to sign up for and attend one of the Zoom conversations about Breathe. There are 5 to choose from, and we will add more if the need arises. We are collaborating in this with other Westchester UU congregations, and one of the facilitators is a member of our congregation in Croton. The groups are scheduled for May 20th through 24th. You may choose Thursday, May 20th at 7:30 p.m., facilitated by Adine Usher and Jeff Tomlinson. Or Friday, May 21st at 11 a.m., facilitated by Tracy Brenneman. Or Saturday, May 22nd at 3 p.m., facilitated by Amy Nathan and me. Or Sunday, May 23rd at noon, facilitated by Eddie Freed. Or Monday, May 24th at 7:30 p.m., facilitated by Kevin McGarren Clemens. You don't have to remember all those times. We will soon have them up on our website, and they'll be in subsequent e-communitarians. I ask that you choose the group and time that's convenient for you and show up in May to choose to engage this beautiful text. It's one of the ways that we can do what our species was made to do and what at our best we do, build belonging together, build community of justice and love. My ask is just that you read the book and come to one 90-minute session to engage with the text and with others. You will find Dr. Perry's book emotionally raw, deeply reflective, and a thing of joy and inspiration. For there is no greater joy or inspiration for people, for humans, than building belonging together, the telos for which natural selection has made us. Widening our circle, building belonging for those who have so often been excluded is how we come into the fullest joy of our own belonging, the greatest joy available to us. is a life pointed towards justice. The progress may come in baby steps or in surprisingly large strides in a short time, but the joy is in living in the along, pointed toward beloved community, toward inclusion, toward justice, whatever the pace of society's progress may be. Imani Perry, born in 1972 in Birmingham, Alabama, interdisciplinary scholar of race, law, literature, and African American culture, professor at Princeton University, has given us an unfettered expression of love, of finding beauty and possibility in life. She writes in the book's afterword, in a life of authorship and interpretation, analysis and architecture and deconstruction, love is my cipher of choice, one that I have decided is better to have than the social contract or law sitting at your core, because you have entered it rather than simply being bound. It has its own improvisation and contingent rules and ethics. Some we give to our young, some they fashion from their own living, and they teach us in the process. They are doing so. Every second person sentence devoted to them in these pages is to all of us. It is received wisdom from their witness and passionate hope for their futures. We, you, they do not have to fight a whole society over its terms to find another way of living, as long as you love the right ones freshly and in the immediacy of your connection. And when you do fight, and I know you will, do not fear the humiliation of defeat. Defeat is not humiliating. Rather, passivity to evil is self-immolation. Witness to the joy and the wound. Imagine and then create laughter and ideas and responsibility to one another. Make in that love a technology to fill up the gaping holes, a gear that whines in the urgency of hope. It is from there that revolutionary possibility emerges. End quote. Breathe is, as you can tell, an elixir of history, ancestry, and compassion, which together become instruction, as the New York Times Review put it. This book is a broad meditation on race, gender, and the meaning of a life well lived, as well as an unforgettable lesson in Black resistance and resilience. If you come to this congregation looking for joy, for uplift and inspiration, this is it. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real, as Marge Piercy has said. Building, belonging together is the work that is real, that swells our hearts, fulfills our spirits, and sets us free. Freedom is coming. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen.
Amen. Please sing along now with the Hallelujah Singers of Boston, hymn number 1035, Freedom is Coming. As the parts of the hymn layer, feel free to move to whichever part feels good for you.
Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Oh yes I know, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming. Oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming. Oh yes I know. 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 Oh yes I know.
Be safe, be well, be righteous, and be free. And now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. As we have gathered, so do we depart, to carry into the world who we are, people of free faith, seeking a deeper truth, people of love, resolved to build belonging.
Live, friends, your covenant to search for truth and meaning.
Go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know.
Go in peace.
If you've got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
Pomme cannelle, or cinnamon apple, from the Guadeloupe-born composer Pierre Alain Pradel.